Have you ever wondered why some people lose everything and still stand tall, while others, who seem to have it all, collapse the moment life gets hard? It's not luck, it's not privilege, it's mental attitude, the invisible force that separates those who break from those who become unbreakable. Every morning, millions wake up already defeated, not by the world, but by their own thoughts. They scroll through bad news, compare their lives to others, and convince themselves that happiness is something out there, waiting to be earned. But here's the paradox the Stoics understood 2,000 years ago. The more you try to control the world, the less control you have over yourself, and in that chaos, one truth remains. Your mind is either your greatest ally or your most dangerous enemy. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't live their lives. They enjoy their thoughts. Before the sun even rises, their mind is already arguing with a world that hasn't happened yet. An email becomes a crisis. A comment becomes an attack. A delay becomes a disaster. But what if the next few minutes could give you something rarer than motivation? Command. Command over how you interpret reality, so that the same day that would break someone else becomes the day you grow calmer, sharper, and stronger. There is a forgotten Stoic skill, a mental reflex, that lets you catch a thought in the split second before it shapes your mood. Miss that moment, and the day owns you. Catch it, and you own the day. In this video, you learn how to build that reflex, a simple yet powerful mental movement you can use anywhere, in traffic, at work, or even in the middle of an argument, to stop the spiral before it starts. Stay until the end, because I'll reveal one Stoic practice most people overlook, a small habit that can transform not just how you think, but how you feel about every challenge in your life. That same calm that once guided emperors and philosophers can belong to you, starting right now. Modern life feels like a quiet battlefield. No swords, no soldiers, just minds, tired, restless, and overrun. We wake up to screens before sunlight, flooded with messages, headlines, and expectations. The world shouts at us from every direction, and somehow, we've mistaken this noise for living. Most people don't fight other people anymore. They fight their own thoughts. They carry invisible wars inside them. They look calm in public, but in private, they are exhausted from wrestling with their minds. The sad truth is, most of us are not defeated by events. We are defeated by interpretations, by the way we think about events. And that's where Stoicism becomes not just useful, but necessary. The Stoics never talked about chasing happiness or pretending everything is fine. They didn't tell you to manifest good vibes. They trained for mental clarity, for realism so strong it became calmness. Marcus Aurelius, a man who carried the weight of an empire, didn't have time for slogans. He had wars to fight, plagues to endure, betrayals to face. Yet, in his private journal, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That one line is enough to change your life. It means that your peace doesn't depend on luck, or wealth, or perfect circumstances. It depends on how you train your attention, how you choose to see. Now, look at our world. We are richer, safer, and more comfortable than any generation before us. And yet, anxiety, depression, and burnout are higher than ever. We have gained control over machines, but lost control over our minds. We have constant access to information, yet less connection to meaning. We've built comfort, but in doing so, we've lost resilience. And comfort without resilience turns into fragility. We panic when plans change. We rage when others disagree. We let minor inconveniences ruin entire days. The Stoics faced far worse: exile, disease, war, loss. Yet they found peace not by escaping reality, but by facing it directly. They understood something simple but powerful. It's not what happens, it's how you see what happens. That's where our journey begins. In this episode, we are going to explore how to build a positive mental attitude. Not the shallow kind that hides pain under fake smiles, but the stoic kind. Calm, grounded, unshakable. You'll learn how to master perception, to control the lens through which you experience reality, reframe adversity, to turn problems into training grounds for strength, discipline, emotion, to stay composed when the world tests. You act with virtue, to turn clarity into real movement, practice gratitude and presence, to make peace your natural state, not a temporary feeling. These 5 pillars are not abstract theories. They are habits, actions you can take daily, just like brushing your teeth or exercising your body. The Stoics believed that philosophy wasn't meant for discussion halls. It was meant for life. They treated every challenge as a form of training. That's how Marcus could remain calm while ruling an empire. That's how Epictetus could rise from slavery to become one of history's greatest teachers. And that's how you can navigate modern chaos with a mind that doesn't fracture under pressure. But let's be clear, this isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally intelligent, to feel deeply, but not drown in feelings, to see reality as it is, and still choose a response that aligns with your values. Most self-help advice tells you to eliminate negativity. The Stoics would tell you to become strong enough that negativity loses its hold. They didn't seek comfort, they sought command. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That's not a slogan, it's a skill that can be practiced, refined, and mastered. So here's the promise of this journey. By the end, you will know how to train your perception, redirect your energy, and respond to life in a way that builds confidence instead of fear. You'll learn to separate what happens from what it means, extract lessons instead of resentment, slow down your reaction just enough to choose wisely. Practice small daily habits that turn wisdom into instinct. We'll move through each pillar step by step. Each one will begin with a real-world problem, the kind you actually face: stress at work, conflict with people, uncertainty about the future. Then, we'll uncover the Stoic insight that solves it, and finally, break it down into practical actions. This is how real learning happens, not through theory, but through application. And because attention is the currency of growth, we'll build this with escalation, each part digging deeper than the last. The first lesson will make you aware. The second will challenge your thinking. The third will test your control. The fourth will demand action. And the fifth, the final one, will bring it all together in a way that reshapes how you live. Before we step into the first pillar, I'll ask 2 things of you. First, as you listen, notice resistance. When a part of you says, "That won't work," or "My life is different," pause. That resistance is not your truth, it's your conditioning. Challenge it. Give the idea 7 days of honest practice before dismissing it. Second, pick one area of your life to apply this in real time. Maybe it's your job, your relationship, or your inner dialogue. Don't spread yourself thin. Focus on one arena. The Stoics believed mastery comes from repetition, not variety. Remember, transformation doesn't happen when you understand something. It happens when you use it. And that begins with a single moment, a single thought, caught before it spirals out of control. That's the moment the Stoics trained for. That's the moment you're about to master. By the end of this episode, you'll have a 3-step reflex: catch, question, choose. Catch the thought, question its truth, choose your response. That's the foundation of Stoic power. And it all starts with the first pillar, the one that shapes how you experience everything that follows, perception. If you can train your perception, you can transform your reality. Let's begin. You wake up before the alarm, and for a quiet second the room is neutral. No past, no inbox, no wait. Then a single thought arrives, unfinished tasks, a message left on read, a number in your bank app, and the color of the morning changes. Have you noticed how quickly that happens? The day hasn't done anything yet, but your perception already has. If we're honest, most of us don't live in events. We live inside the explanations we attach to them. An email isn't just text, it's a predicted conflict. A delay isn't just a delay, it's a story about being disrespected. Perception is the lens that paints a world onto the world. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't beg reality to be softer. He trained his lens to be clearer. If you are pained by anything external, he writes, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. What would it be like to actually trust that? Not as a quote, but as an operating system. Let's slow down. Picture a routine stressor, the morning commute, a colleague's curt message, a kid's refusal to put on shoes. Notice how your first interpretation tends to be global and personal. Why does this always happen to me? Why can't they? The lens magnifies. Now consider an alternative. What if that same moment is local and impersonal? A small traffic pattern, a rushed typist, a tired child. Same event, new lens. Feel the shift in your chest. One turn of the lens, and your nervous system no longer treats inconvenience as danger. This is not denial. It's precision. Reality is rough enough. We don't need to sharpen it with story. Perception training is the art of separating what happened from what you think it means, long enough to choose a meaning that is true and useful. That's our work in this pillar. To move from reflex to response, from tinted glass to clear seeing. And we begin not by forcing positivity, but by noticing the moment where interpretation starts. The first caption you write over your life. Catch that moment, and you stop the spiral before it begins. Let's explore the machinery beneath perception. When something hits your senses, a look, a tone, a notification, your brain performs a lightning-fast sequence. Detect, label, predict, protect. The label is where trouble begins. He's dismissing me. She's ungrateful. I'm falling behind. Labels feel like facts, but they're really bets your brain places to save time. The Stoics invite you to inspect the bet before you wager your piece on it. Epictetus puts it simply. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. In other words, your nervous system keeps asking your narrative for instructions. If the story says threat, the body obeys with adrenaline. If the story says challenge, the body delivers focus. Try this experiment today. When you feel your chest tighten, whisper to yourself, label check. Then write down 3 alternative labels that also fit the facts. Not perfect labels, plausible ones. He's dismissing me becomes he's distracted. He's brief. He's under pressure. Feel which label creates options. A dismissive person invites defensiveness. A distracted person invites clarity. A pressured person invites help. Same external event, 3 internal worlds. You just watched perception change your reality. You might ask, but what if the worst label is correct? Good question. Sometimes it is. The point isn't to pretend otherwise. It's to earn the right to that conclusion by testing alternatives first. In practice, 9 of 10 frictions in daily life are misunderstandings, timing errors, misaligned incentives, not malice. Training yourself to explore neutral labels lowers false alarms and preserves energy for genuine threats. There's another mechanic worth seeing: globalizing. Notice how quickly a single hiccup becomes a verdict on your identity. I'm not cut out for this. Stoic perception resists that slide. It keeps problems specific and present tense. This task is hard right now. Not I'm a failure. Specific, present, solvable. That's the mental posture of someone who gets through hard days intact. Not lighter than life, just clearer than panic. Have you ever watched a musician hold a single rest? One beat of silence. That makes the next note land with power. Perception training has its own rest, the Stoic pause. It's the micro gap between stimulus and story. A two-breath space where you refuse to feed the first interpretation. In that pause, you ask gentle questions that loosen the knot. What exactly happened? What did I add? What else could this be? What would I advise a friend here? 2 breaths for questions, enough to move your mind from alarm to agency. Let's make it concrete. You receive a terse message from your manager. Call me. Your heart rate spikes, and in an instant your brain assembles a highlight reel of mistakes. That's the first story. Pause, 2 breaths. You open your notebook and run the 4 questions. What happened? A short message. What did I add? I'm in trouble. What else could this be? A scheduling issue. A quick request. A new task. What would I advise a friend? Call. Be calm. Ask for a context. That's perception training in 10 seconds. No denial. Just precision before prediction. Over time, this pause becomes a reflex. Think of it like a mental catch on a sliding door. Without it, the door slams, your mood closes, your day narrows. With it, the door glides, and you walk through with your attention intact. The payoff isn't only fewer emotional crashes, it's better decisions. A calm mind notices more data. A wider lens sees more exits. A patient posture hears what the other person actually said, not what your fear insisted it meant. You can stack the pause with a physical cue. Press your thumb and middle finger together and name the moment. Between, let the cue stand for a tiny sanctuary where you don't argue with reality or indulge catastrophe. You simply gather the scene. For a week, practice between in low-stakes moments, spilled coffee, slow loading apps, so that the skill is ready when the stakes climb. Mastery is not built during the storm. It's packed neatly on clear days, then opened when the clouds arrive. Some people hear reframe and think pretend. That's not Stoic. Stoic reframing is truthful repositioning. You turn the event in your hands until you can see what's controllable, what's learnable, and what's endurable. Nothing fake, no glitter on grief, just accurate alignment. When Marcus writes that the blazing fire turns everything thrown into brightness, he doesn't mean the wood stops being wood. He means the fire knows what to do with it. Reframing asks, what would a wiser version of me do with this? Let's take a common pain point. Public criticism. Your project launches and someone posts a cutting comment. The first frame says, I'm exposed. The Stoic frame says, I'm visible. And visibility comes with noise. What signal is here? Extract the 10% that improves your craft. Discard the 90% that's theater and keep moving. Or consider rejection, a declined proposal, a passed-over promotion. The first frame says, I'm unwanted. The Stoic frame says, my current fit with this target is low. The data teaches me where to sharpen. That's not sugarcoating. That's survival math. You can sow emotional fuel for iteration. Reframing also shrinks infinity. Instead of I'll never get through this, try I need to navigate the next honest step. Instead of everything is falling apart, try several things are hard. Let me rank them. The mind loves dramatic totals. Your life needs actionable parts. Write them. The act of listing is a physical reframe. Chaos becomes cue. As the cue structures itself, your breath evens out. You are not happier, you are steadier. And that's the kind of positivity Stoicism respects. There is a boundary here. Do not refrain to escape action. It's not that bad can be a lie the ego tells to avoid a hard conversation. The honest reframe ends with a verb. Ask, repair, plan, decline, begin. In the Stoic sense, positivity is movement aligned with values. If your reframe makes you passive, it's not wisdom, it's anesthesia. Choose the lens that returns you to the present with clarity and the next right step in hand. Philosophy becomes muscle when it's practiced daily. 3 simple drills will make perception training your default. Drill 1. Morning neutral. Before you check anything, spend 90 seconds naming 5 neutral facts about your world. There is light through the window. My body is breathing. The floor is cool. I am sitting. Today has not happened yet. This resets the lens to uncolored reality. Then set a single interpretive intention. Today, when the story rushes in, I will check labels first. You don't promise perfection. You choose posture. Drill 2. Evening audit. Choose one moment when your lens helped and one when it hurt. For each, write the raw event, the first interpretation, the alternative labels you could have used, and the action you actually took. End with a 1-line upgrade for tomorrow. When terse email arrives, pause, ask for context. The audit is 5 minutes, not therapy. Over weeks, you will notice patterns, the times of day your lens smears, the topics that trigger globalizing, the people whose tone you misread. Patterns make preparation possible. Drill 3. Micro-exposure. Once a day, invite a small inconvenience on purpose. Take the longer line. Drive the slower lane. Leave the message unread for 3 extra minutes. Not to suffer pointlessly, but to train your nervous system to tolerate minor uncertainty without writing horror captions. While you wait, narrate the facts like a calm reporter. The line is moving. My feet are tired. I am safe. I can choose my next thought. This is exposure therapy for everyday life. It builds the stamina to hold a steady lens when something larger hits. Stack these with a weekly Stoic walk. 20 minutes with no headphones. Reviewing your week's labels and rehearsing better ones. Ask, where did I mistake inconvenience for disrespect? Where did I confuse urgency with importance? Where did I add drama to neutral data? End the walk with one commitment you can keep. Small promises kept quietly restore self-trust. And self-trust keeps your lens from hunting for threats it doesn't need. There's a moment. If you practice, when you realize you're no longer forcing calm, you're finding it. The lens you've trained begins to operate in the background. A driver cuts you off, and your body moves the car instead of the mouth. A colleague's short reply lands, and your hand reaches for clarity instead of a grudge. Your child melts down, and you become the temperature in the room, not the spark. This is not sainthood, it's skill. Assembled breath by breath. You might worry, does this make me dull? Less ambitious, less alive? The opposite. Clear perception returns your energy to the work and people that matter. You stop hemorrhaging attention on false alarms and can invest deeply where your actions compound. You become a steadier partner, a saner colleague, a kinder parent to yourself. The world does not soften, but it becomes navigable. Because you are not fighting ghosts your lens invented. There will be days when the old lens reappears: fatigue, illness, genuine injustice. On those days, the practice is gentler. Name the weight, narrow the horizon, and choose one honest step. The Stoics did not ask you to be invincible. They asked you to be willing. Willing to look again. Willing to reframe truthfully. Willing to act without theatrics. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Marcus writes, be one in our pillar. That means waste no more time arguing with events. See them, then become the person who can meet them. Before we move to the next pillar, Hold one simple ritual. Catch. Question. Choose. Catch the first label. Question whether it's the only one. Choose the one that keeps you accurate and able. That is Stoic positivity. Not a painted smile, but a practiced stance. Not lighter than life, but truer than panic. If you can train your perception, you are already training your future. And if you do it daily, quietly, without applause, one morning you will wake to the same world as everyone else and discover you are not at its mercy anymore. You are finally at the helm. Now that you've learned to see more clearly, the next question is inevitable. What happens when the world still hits hard? Because no matter how much clarity you build, life will still find ways to test it. You can polish the lens, but storms will come. The job loss, the betrayal, the diagnosis, the sudden silence of someone you thought would stay. There's a quiet cruelty to those moments, not because they're loud, but because they feel final. It's the stillness after impact that breaks most people, not the strike itself. The mind whispers, it wasn't supposed to happen like this, and that sentence becomes the root of so much suffering. Supposed to. Have you noticed that? How pain deepens the more we resist the fact that it's already here. We replay, rewrite, resist, as if the past will apologize. But reality doesn't negotiate. It just is. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave it language. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The pain we relive through stories outlives the pain itself. To reframe adversity isn't to deny its sting. It's to see pain as raw material, not a verdict." The Stoics had a phrase for this, amor fati, to love one's fate. Not tolerate it, not endure it, love it. Because hidden inside every unwelcome event is an instruction manual for growth, one that can't be written any other way. When Marcus Aurelius lost children, faced plague, betrayal, and war, he didn't ask, "Why me?" He asked, "What for? What can this forge in me that he's never could?" He wasn't seeking meaning in suffering. He was creating meaning through endurance. That's the essence of this pillar. Pain will visit you, discomfort will find you, but what you do in that visit determines who you become afterward. You can fight it and break, or you can work with it and build. Every person who has truly matured has walked through something that didn't go according to plan. Maybe that's you, standing in the ruins of an expectation. If it is, you're exactly where the Stoic path begins, not in victory, but in confrontation with reality. So here's a question to carry into the next moment that challenges you. What if this isn't punishment? What if this is practice? The mind that asks that question is already rising. And from that moment on, adversity stops being a wall. It becomes a mirror. Most people spend their lives bargaining with reality. They say things like, "If only I had more time," or "If this hadn't happened, I'd be fine." But listen closely. That "if only" is the softest form of despair. It's the mind clinging to a version of the past that no longer exists. The Stoics called it resistance to fate, the desire for a life to unfold according to your script. But life has its own authorship. You can curse the edits, or you can learn to read what's written differently. That's where amor fati begins. It doesn't ask you to smile through pain or pretend tragedy is beautiful. It asks something much braver. To say, even this loss, even this delay, even this season of uncertainty, I will work with it, not against it. It sounds poetic until life demands it from you. When the person you trusted walks away, when the business you built collapses, when the test results don't come back clean, that's where philosophy stops being a book and becomes breath. Marcus Aurelius never preached optimism. He practiced perspective. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't celebrating misfortune. He was recognizing its utility. Every obstacle, when faced with composure, becomes material for strength. Every disruption becomes designed. Ask yourself, how many moments in your life looked like endings, but later revealed themselves as beginnings? How many heartbreaks became detours to better truths? How many humiliations taught you humility? If you trace it back, some of your deepest peace came after your deepest pain. That's not coincidence. That's the curriculum of reality. Reframing adversity doesn't erase the wound. It changes what the wound means. A scar is not proof of harm. It's proof of healing. When you begin to see pain as a teacher, life stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like a dialogue. So instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Try, what is this moment asking of me? Patience, courage, surrender, action. Each answer shapes a different version of you. Here's a truth the Stoics lived by. The universe is not against you. It's indifferent, and that's your advantage. Because in indifference lies room for freedom. You get to decide how to meet what happens. And the moment you choose to engage rather than resist, adversity loses its authority. Think about it. When something goes wrong today, will you recoil or respond? When you fail, will you add self-hatred to loss or curiosity to learning? This is not about toxic positivity. It's about training your eyes to look for what remains usable in every wreckage. Every hardship holds a hidden handle, something you can grip to pull yourself forward. Find it, name it, work with it. That's the discipline of Amor Fati. Not love as feeling, but love as fidelity. The kind of loyalty to life that says, I will not abandon what is. I will meet it fully. And when you do, pain changes shape. It stops being an enemy and starts being a sculptor. What it carves away was never meant to stay. There comes a moment in every life when the world says no. No to your plans. No to your timing. No to your sense of fairness. And the way you meet that no defines the architecture of your inner world more than any success ever could. You've probably felt it. The rejection that shakes your sense of worth. The betrayal that steals your appetite. The silence after a risk that didn't pay off. These are the moments that strip away illusion. The world is not built to flatter your expectations, and sometimes it seems determined to dismantle them. The instinct, of course, is to resist, to argue with reality. We say, this shouldn't be happening, but that sentence, those four words, are the birthplace of suffering. Because when you tell yourself life should be different, you're fighting gravity. You waste your strength wishing the river would flow upstream. The Stoics understood something simpler. You don't control the current, but you do control the boat. When the wind shifts, you can curse the wind, or you can adjust the sail. And every time you choose the second, you get stronger. Epictetus, who spent his youth enslaved and crippled by a master, said, when something happens, the only thing in your power is to accept or reject it. But once accepted, use it well. He wasn't romanticizing cruelty. He was reclaiming agency. He was saying, even when I'm not free to choose the event, I am free to choose the meaning. Think about that. If meaning is up to you, then pain is no longer a verdict. It's raw material. When the world says no, it's handing you a different shape of yes, one you may not yet understand. Every no is an invitation to build something the easy days never asked of you. Endurance, adaptability, humility, or wisdom. Reframing is not pretending the no doesn't hurt. It's learning to listen beneath the hurt. What is this moment really saying? Is it teaching patience? Teaching you that approval isn't oxygen? Teaching you that loss is not the same as emptiness? When a door closes, it's not always rejection. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes it's direction. You only see that from a comma distance. So try this. The next time life interrupts your plan, instead of asking why now, whisper what next. That small shift in language reclaims the helm. It signals to your nervous system, I'm not powerless, I'm adjusting course. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. He didn't write that as metaphor. He wrote it in the middle of plague and loss, surrounded by chaos. He was describing the mind trained to transmute, not to escape, but to integrate. So when the world says no, don't collapse into despair. Take the hit, feel it, breathe through it, and then, as the only question that matters, what is this trying to make of me? Because that's where strength begins, not in getting what you want, but in learning to become unbreakable when you don't. Struggle has a strange honesty to it. It doesn't flatter you, it doesn't hide your weaknesses. It simply hands you a mirror and says, here, this is who you are without comfort, and most people look away. We spend so much of our lives trying to edit difficulty out of existence, to find a version of living where everything finally feels smooth. But if you think about it, every skill you're proud of, every ounce of character you respect in yourself, was forged under pressure. No one ever became wise in a life that went exactly as planned. The Stoics called this the alchemy of struggle, the art of turning obstacles into elements of growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." It sounds simple, but it's not an idea. It's a discipline. You practice it every time something goes wrong and you choose observation over outrage. There's a quiet test happening in every hardship. When things fall apart, the question isn't why me, it's who do I want to be in this? The answer to that question determines whether your pain becomes poison or medicine. Think of struggle as the gym of the soul. Resistance is what builds strength, not in your body, but in your patience, your clarity, your humility. Every inconvenience is a weight you can lift or drop. When you lift it with attention, it transforms you. When you refuse, it doubles back as bitterness. Here's the paradox. Struggle is neutral until your interpretation gives it meaning. Pain itself is data. It tells you where life is asking for a new skill. A difficult colleague teaches composure. A delay teaches pacing. A heartbreak teaches detachment and discernment. Even illness, in its cruel way, teaches fragility. A lesson about how precious ordinary days really are. Seneca once said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." He wasn't glorifying suffering. He was describing refinement. When metal meets fire, it loses impurities. When a person meets adversity with presence, they lose illusion. Ask yourself, what if life isn't testing you to break you, but to reveal what's been dormant? What if every obstacle is a kind of invitation to a higher version of yourself, one that can't emerge in calm weather? The mind trained in Stoic reframing doesn't chase struggle, but it doesn't fear it either. It meets it with curiosity. It asks, what is this teaching me about myself that success could never show? And when you start seeing struggle that way, something subtle happens. You stop wishing for an easier life and start wishing for a stronger mind. You realize the goal isn't to avoid resistance, but to become someone who can meet it gracefully. Because when struggle becomes teacher, every hardship becomes a form of instruction. And in that moment, life stops feeling like it's happening to you. It starts feeling like it's happening for you. There's a point in every storm when you realize fighting the wind is useless, that all you can do is adjust your footing and breathe through it. That's what emotional endurance really is. It's not suppression, it's stability. It's the decision to stay present when everything in you wants to run. Pain tempts you to collapse into story. It whispers, this will never end. You can't handle this. You're alone. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still moving. Notice that the body is often wiser than the mind. It keeps going quietly while the mind screams for escape. The Stoics saw endurance not as punishment, but as practice. They treated difficulty like a form of weight training for the spirit. Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests the brave." He didn't mean you have to enjoy the fire, only that you recognize its purpose. Endurance is the bridge between pain and power. It's the space where strength silently accumulates. When something hurts, your instinct is to flinch away. But every time you stay with the feeling, just long enough to see what's under it, you grow a little more unshakable. You learn that pain is rarely permanent. It's usually a wave. If you can outlast the peak, the rest is just movement. Try this. The next time you're overwhelmed, don't reach for distraction right away. Instead, name the sensation. I feel heat in my chest, tightness in my throat, a drop in my stomach. Label the physical before the psychological. You'll notice the emotion loses half its power once it's described precisely. That's endurance. Not gritting your teeth, but staying conscious through discomfort. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. Whenever fear or frustration rose, he would remind himself, if it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. He wasn't being harsh. He was being merciful. Because complaining multiplies suffering. Acceptance contains it. Endurance isn't Stoic detachment. It's Stoic participation. It's saying, I'm still here, even when your plans dissolve, even when your confidence trembles, you keep showing up. You answer emails with kindness. You eat something nourishing. You take a slow walk at dusk. These small acts are not trivial. They're anchors. They remind you that stability doesn't come from outcomes, but from attention. Think of emotional endurance as the art of staying open when closing would be easier. Anyone can be kind when life is kind. Anyone can be composed when everything works. But the person who keeps their heart anand in difficulty, that person has touched the core of Stoicism. Epictetus once said, "No great thing is created suddenly." He might as well have been talking about endurance. It's not a single act of courage. It's 100 small surrenders to the moment, repeated until peace becomes familiar again. So when life feels heavy, don't rush to remove the weight. Balance it. Carry it differently. Each breath you take beneath that weight builds something invisible. A quiet strength that will outlast every storm. And someday, when another person collapses under theirs, you will recognize the look in their eyes, and without saying a word, they'll see it in yours, the steady calm of someone who has already survived themselves. At some point, you stop trying to fix everything, not out of defeat, but out of understanding. You realize that acceptance isn't surrender, it's alignment. It's the quiet acknowledgement that what has happened, and that your power lies not in rewriting it, but in responding to it with grace. That's the hidden destination of all Stoic reframing. Not forced optimism, not emotional numbness, but freedom. Freedom from arguing with what already is. Freedom from living twice. Once in reality, and once in regret. Most people think acceptance is passive. They picture a shrug, a giving up. But real acceptance is active. It's a decision made in full consciousness. It's saying, I don't control this outcome, but I control who I am inside it. It's reclaiming authorship in a story you didn't write the beginning of, but can still choose the tone of every line that follows. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A rock is not hurt by the rain." He wasn't glorifying indifference. He was describing composure. When you accept reality, you stop dissolving every time something shifts. You become like that rock, not rigid, but rooted. And when the rain comes, you let it fall. Imagine this. One morning you wake up, and everything you planned falls through. The project, the relationship, the sense of control. You feel the shock first, then the sadness, and finally the silence. But instead of panicking, you breathe. You whisper, this too, not as resignation, but as recognition. This too belongs to life. This too will teach me. That sentence. This too is a small act of liberation. It untangles you from the fantasy that life must always be fair or pleasant to be meaningful. And in its place, it leaves something steadier. Trust. Acceptance doesn't erase effort. You still work, still care, still dream, but without clinging. You understand that results are not identity, and outcomes are not judgments. You begin to measure success not by control, but by presence. Did I meet this moment fully? Did I stay honest? Did I act with virtue? If yes, then peace follows, regardless of result. Epictetus called this the true freedom. No man is free who is not master of himself. And mastery begins the moment you stop demanding that life obey you. Because when you stop fighting the tide, you realize the current was never your enemy. It was always carrying you somewhere you couldn't have reached by walking. Think about your own life for a second. Every version of you that exists now, the wiser one, the calmer one, was born from a moment you didn't want to live through. Ping carved the channels where understanding now flows. If you could go back, would you erase those moments, knowing they gave you this perspective? Probably not, because acceptance transforms pain into wisdom, and wisdom into compassion. That's the quiet miracle of reframing adversity. You don't just survive what hurt you, you expand because of it. You gain range, depth, patience. You start meeting other people's pain with less judgment and more presence. You start speaking softer, listening longer. You stop needing to win every argument and begin wanting to understand. This is what freedom feels like. Not the absence of difficulty, but the absence of resistance. You walk through the same world, but it no longer defines you. You bend with it, but you don't break under it. So, when the next storm comes, and it will, remember, you faced worse. You stood where hope was then and found light anyway. And that means you've already proven what the Stoics have always known, that a calm, steady mind is stronger than circumstance. Acceptance isn't the end of your growth. It's the beginning of true peace, the kind that doesn't depend on weather, praise, or success. The kind that travels with you quietly, wherever life chooses to lead. Sometimes it's not the world that overwhelms you, it's your own reaction to it. A harsh word, a delayed message, a sudden change of plans. And before you realize it, the calm you built starts to dissolve. Not because something catastrophic happened, but because your mind turned a ripple into a storm. Have you noticed how quickly emotions rewrite the truth? A single misunderstanding becomes rejection. A minor inconvenience becomes injustice. A passing comment becomes an insult carved into stone. The Stoics understood that external chaos is rarely the real enemy, and trained emotion is. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He wasn't dismissing feeling. He was describing distortion, the mind's tendency to amplify pain and assign meaning where none was given. Emotional discipline, then, isn't about suppression. It's not about freezing your humanity. It's about awareness, the ability to see the wave without drowning in it. It's realizing that feelings are not orders. They are signals, and signals require interpretation before reaction. When something triggers you, you have two choices: to mirror the chaos or to observe it. The first option is easy. It happens by instinct. The second is mastery. It happens by choice. Epictetus reminded his students. It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them in modern terms. This means emotion begins not in your heart, but in your thoughts. A feeling doesn't command you. Your interpretation does. So when your chest tightens, when anger rises, when fear presses against your ribs, pause. Ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Is this fact, or is it fiction I build from assumption? Most of the time, you'll find that your suffering isn't caused by the event itself, but by the speed of your reaction. You never gave yourself space to respond. You just obeyed the first impulse. Emotional discipline is the art of creating that space. A small gap between what happens and what you do next. A sacred breath before the reply, before the accusation, before the surrender. That single breath has saved empires, relationships, and reputations. And it can save your peace too. Because in that moment, when you refuse to be dragged by emotion, you're not running from life. You're reclaiming authorship over your mind. If you could slow down your reactions by even a few seconds, you would change the course of entire conversations, maybe entire days. Think about how many regrets in your life began with speed. The message sent too soon, the words said too sharply, the silence held too long. The Stoics trained for this. They practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of misfortune. It wasn't pessimism, it was emotional rehearsal. They imagined loss, insult, and change in advance, so that when life delivered them, the blow was softer. This is how emotional discipline works. You don't wait for a calm moments to practice calm. You build calm so it's ready when the storm arrives. Let's make this simple. The next time someone irritates you, don't rush to interpret. Instead, narrate like a scientist. A sound reached my ears. It caused tension in my chest. I notice a thought forming. They disrespected me. I'm observing that thought. That's it. Observation before participation. In those few seconds, something incredible happens. The emotion loses its ownership over you. You're still feeling it, but you're also seeing it. And seeing is the first step towards sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius did this daily. He reminded himself, when you're offended, remember, you have given the offense permission to enter your mind. He wasn't blaming himself. He was reminding himself of power. No one can force you to feel small without your cooperation. You can practice this in ordinary moments. When traffic slows, when technology glitches, when someone cuts you off mid-sentence. Each is an invitation to reclaim the space between stimulus and response. Emotional discipline doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you start choosing what feeling becomes action. You learn to delay reaction until clarity catches up, and clarity, once practiced, becomes reflex. It's like strengthening a muscle, small, consistent reps of restraint until patience feels natural. That's what separates the frantic from the free. Not perfect control, but practiced composure. The most dangerous thing about emotion is how convincing it feels. When anger floods you, it swears it's justice. When fear whispers, it sounds like wisdom. When sadness visits, it insists it will never leave. But emotion, left unexamined, is a temporary guest that talks like a prophet. It doesn't know the future. It only knows how to protect you from pain. And protection often looks like aggression, withdrawal, or despair. Seneca once wrote, "He who is angry is the slave of whoever provokes him." Think about that. Every time you let anger dictate your behavior, you hand your peace to someone else. You let them pull the strings of your mind. So the next time emotion rises like a tide, remember, your first interpretation is rarely your wisest one. Before you act, ask yourself, what would this look like from a calmer mind? If you can imagine a more grounded version of yourself, that version already exists within you. It just needs a moment to breathe. Practice questioning emotion the same way you'd question gossip. Is this fact or rumor? Is this story useful or self-destructive? Does this make me smaller or stronger? You don't silence feelings. You interview them. And if they keep lying, you stop hiring them as advisors. That's emotional discipline. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of understanding. The Stoics weren't cold. They were clear. They didn't want to feel less. They wanted to react better. And when you see emotion as data, not destiny, every mood becomes manageable. The wave still rises, But now you can serve it. There's a voice that lives inside your head, the one that comments on everything you do. It judges, compares, warns, praises, and sometimes punishes. You can't shut it off, but you can train it. Most people let that voice run wild. When they make a mistake, it turns cruel. You always mess this up. When they succeed, it moves the goalpost. It's not enough. And when life disappoints them, it becomes dramatic. Nothing ever works for me. The Stoics understood that emotional chaos often begins there, in the unchecked inner dialogue. They treated self-talk as a discipline, not an accident. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not to the world, but to himself. Every line begins with a conversation between the rational mind and the emotional one. He wasn't writing philosophy. He was retraining tone. He would say things like, "You faced this before. You'll face it again. Remember how small this will look from above." It wasn't denial. It was calibration, bringing perspective back into a mind that wanted to panic. You can do the same. When anger or fear rises, speak to yourself as a calm friend would. Try this sentence: "I see what's happening, and I'm staying." Notice what happens when you replace the inner shout with a steady statement. Emotion begins to obey tone. Your body takes instruction from your words, Seneca wrote. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. The inner voice interprets that as, you are being trained, not punished, and instantly. Hindrance feels different. Not something to suffer through, but something to shape you. The point of training your inner voice isn't to be cheerful. It's to be accurate. You replace exaggeration with fact. You replace panic with proportion. Instead of everything's falling apart, try something has changed. And I can adapt. Instead of I can't handle this, try this is how. And I'm learning how. Notice the shift. Not in what's happening, but in how it lands inside you. Language rewires perception, and perception, as you've learned, creates emotion. So if you want emotional discipline, start with the words you use privately. Because the voice you listen to most isn't from the world, it's from within. And if you can make that voice calmer, kinder, and clearer, the storms outside lose their ability to control you. When the inner dialogue becomes balanced, even silence feels supportive. You stop begging life to be easier, and instead, you become more capable. That's the first sign of mastery. Not that emotion disappears, but that it starts following your lead. In a world that rewards reaction, restraint looks like weakness. People think silence means surrender, that calmness means apathy. But in truth, restraint is the highest form of power, because it means you can act, yet choose not to. Emotional discipline reaches maturity when you no longer let urgency define importance. Most chaos comes from speed, from the need to reply instantly, defend immediately, fix everything at once. But the Stoic learns that time itself is a tool. Delay is not avoidance, it's refinement. Every second you wait before reacting is a moment your wisdom gathers its footing. Seneca said, "Anger, if not restrained, is more harmful to us than the injury that provokes it." Think about that. The insult lasts seconds, but the echo of your reaction can last months, an apology you never get to make, a bridge you can't rebuild, a version of yourself you wish you could take back. Restraint isn't about being passive. It's about protecting peace before pride. Let's take something simple. You receive a message that feels disrespectful. Your heart jumps. Your thumbs hover. A dozen sharp replies form instantly. But then you stop. One breath. One pause. You step outside the moment and ask, what outcome do I want? Victory or understanding? That single question changes everything. Because when you aim for understanding, restraint becomes natural. Marcus Aurelius faced daily criticism as emperor, and yet he wrote, "When others blame you, respond not with anger, but with clarity. The wrong they do is their own." He didn't need to prove composure. He practiced it. He knew that reacting to provocation is easy. Anyone can be triggered. But remaining unmoved is rare, and rarity is value. There's a quiet dignity in not being pulled into every argument, not needing to explain your piece to those committed to misunderstanding it. You begin to realize not every opinion deserves a response, and not every battle is worth your energy. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is to let someone be wrong about you and keep walking. Restraint doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start choosing when caring matters. It's the art of saving your emotional energy for things that actually shape your life, not those that only shake your mood. So, the next time you feel that rush, that impulse to defend, to clap back, to prove, try this, say nothing, not out of fear, but out of mastery. Let silence do what noise cannot, reveal the truth over time. The Stoic doesn't waste emotion on every disturbance. He saves it for creation, for compassion, for courage. Restraint is how you protect those reserves. Remember, anyone can shout, but only the strong can stay silent. Not because they're indifferent, but because they have already won the only battle that matters, the one within. There comes a point in your practice when calm is no longer something you chase. It becomes who you are. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop being owned by feeling. The noise of the world still exists, but it can't reach the center anymore, because you've built that center yourself. One breath, one choice, one act of restraint at a time. Marcus Aurelius described this kind of calm beautifully. He said, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." He wasn't describing indifference. He was describing presence, the ability to stay grounded while everything else moves, to know that chaos is external, but peace is internal. That's the goal of emotional discipline. Not a life without storms, but a self that remains unshaken within them. You'll still get angry, afraid, or disappointed, but those emotions pass through you now. They no longer define you. You become the witness, not the whirlwind. Think of how freeing that is. No longer being a hostage to moods. No longer needing every moment to go your way in order to feel steady. You stop negotiating your peace with circumstance. You stop letting every comment, delay, or rejection decide the quality of your day. Instead, you carry your own weather. Come regardless of forecast. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom, then, isn't out there in status or success. It's in here, in the quiet authority of self-control. The person who can stay composed while others lose balance, who can listen while others shout, who can wait while others rush. That person has already transcended most of life's noise. Emotional discipline is not detachment from life. It's engagement with clarity. It's learning to respond instead of react, to feel deeply, but not destructively, to care fully, but not carelessly. It's the realization that peace isn't fragile. It's a choice renewed every moment you decide not to surrender your attention to chaos. And here's the paradox. Once calm becomes your default, the world begins to mirror it back to you. People soften in your presence. Conversations slow down. Conflict finds less traction. It's as if your steadiness teaches others how to breathe again. You start to understand why the Stoics called tranquility the highest virtue. Because from it, all others flow. Patience, kindness, courage, wisdom. They all grow in the soil of a calm mind. When you reach that place, life still tests you. But instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" you say, "Here is the next lesson," and the lesson is always the same. hold your center one day. You look back at all the times you thought you were breaking and see that those were the very moments you were being built. The chaos you feared was never your enemy. It was your curriculum. So breathe. And remember this, you can't control the storm. You can only control the sailor. And when you master that, truly master it, you discover the calm that cannot be taken. There's a point in every Stoic journey when thinking is no longer enough. You've learned to see clearly. You've learned to endure calmly. But now the question shifts from the inside to the outside. What will you do with that calm? Because wisdom without movement is weight. If clarity doesn't translate into action, it hardens into vanity. The kind of knowledge that feels righteous but changes nothing. Marcus Aurelius faced that temptation daily. He could have drowned in thought, in philosophy, in ideals, but he ruled an empire. His meditations weren't written for comfort. They were reminders to act. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Those 8 words are the spine of this pillar. Virtue, to the Stoic, isn't about appearing good. It's about being effective in goodness, to bring your values into motion, even when it costs you ease. You know this feeling already. When you stand at the threshold of a decision and your conscience speaks, that faint, inconvenient truth you wish you could ignore. It's the instinct that says, you could lie here and no one would notice. You could take the easy path and no one would blame you. Virtue whispers, do what's right anyway. That whisper is heavy, isn't it? Because doing what's right rarely feels convenient. It costs comfort. It costs approval. Sometimes, it even costs opportunity. But that's what makes it powerful. It's an act of alignment. Every time you act with integrity, even in private, something inside you straightens. The spine of the soul strengthens a little more. You start trusting yourself in silence. The kind of trust that doesn't depend on reputation or reward. Seneca said, "A good character, once established, becomes the only shield you'll ever need." That's what virtue is. Self-respect turned into armor. Not arrogance, but assurance. You'll notice this. When your actions match your principles, you stop living defensively. You stop performing for approval, because you've already earned your own. And that changes everything. The way you walk, the way you speak, the way you decide. Virtue isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's not about being right once. It's about showing up right repeatedly, even when no one's keeping score. That repetition builds weight. A gravity that others feel when they stand next to you. So the next time you hesitate to do what you know is right, remember this: the price of integrity is discomfort, but the cost of betraying it is self-doubt. One fades with time, the other lingers forever. In the end, virtue isn't about being pure. It's about being anchored, a person who moves through a chaotic world, steady because they know who they are. Clarity means nothing without movement. You can read every book, quote every philosopher, meditate for hours, but if, when the moment comes, you fail to act, the lesson dies in your mind. The Stoics never worshipped thought. They trained it for deployment. Their philosophy wasn't meant to stay on parchment. It was meant to be carried into the dust of daily life, into politics, business, friendship, conflict, and duty. Marcus Aurelius woke before sunrise to handle petitions and judgments for an empire. Epictetus taught not from a desk, but from experience, forged in slavery. Seneca advised emperors while wrestling with his own conscience. They lived in motion because they knew virtue without action is a body without a pulse. We live in an age of endless reflection. Everyone is working on themselves, reading, planning, journaling. But how many translate insight into behavior? The Stoic path asks something harder. Turn awareness into embodiment. If you value honesty, speak truth when it costs you. If you value discipline, show up when you least feel like it. If you value compassion, practice it toward those who least deserve it. This is the real discipline of doing. Not grand gestures, but micro acts of alignment that accumulate into character. Virtue grows in the mundane. It's in showing patience with someone who tests it. It's in sending the difficult message instead of hiding behind delay. It's in choosing diligence when no one's watching, humility when praised, and forgiveness when you could easily win by pride. Every time you choose action over avoidance, philosophy becomes flesh. And the strange thing is, the world rarely notices. But you will. Your inner voice softens. Your sleep deepens. The tension of living in contradiction begins to fade. Seneca said, "Philosophy teaches us to act, not to speak. It's easy to sound wise. It's harder to be kind under pressure. It's easy to imagine courage. It's harder to stand firm when everything shakes." That's where the Stoic finds freedom, not in theories, but in practice. We often ask for motivation, but what we need is momentum. Motivation waits for feeling. Momentum begins with motion. When you move, even a little, clarity follows. And once you start acting from principle, something subtle happens. The mind that once doubted itself begins to trust again. You stop needing the world to validate your intentions. Your behavior becomes its own proof. And that's how character stabilizes. Virtue, in practice, is the discipline of doing, quietly, consistently, even when no one applauds. Because real strength doesn't announce itself. It simply shows up. So don't wait for a perfect timing or the right mood. Act, then think, then act again. That rhythm, steady, humble, and ending, is how the Stoic turns wisdom into movement, and movement into meaning. The hardest virtue to practice is courage, not the kind shouted on battlefields, but the quiet kind that shows up when no one else does. It's easier to follow the crowd when values are convenient. It's harder to stand upright when doing so isolates you. Most people think courage is about confrontation, about facing danger. But the Stoics knew that the deeper form of courage is moral. The strength to remain aligned with what's right even when it costs you belonging. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." He didn't say, "If it's popular." He said, "If it's right." That's the test. The world rewards compliance, not conviction. It celebrates noise, not integrity. But the Stoic acts by principle, not applause. Think about the last time you felt that tremor. That subtle fear of being misunderstood or left out because you spoke up or refused to join. That tension in your chest. That's the birthplace of courage. Courage doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you choose action anyway. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." The same applies to approval. The person who depends on constant agreement is emotionally poor. The person who can act alone, with quiet certainty, is free. You'll reach a point where your peace depends on your alignment, not your audience. And that's when your strength becomes unshakable. Because once you stop needing everyone to understand you, you gain the power to move forward even when no one follows. Epictetus warned his students, "You will be laughed at, mocked, and misunderstood. So what? Keep your course," to him. Ridicule was proof of progress, a sign that you had stopped orbiting the opinions of others. This is where most people stumble. They mistake being liked for being right, and comfort for growth. But comfort rarely produces character. If your values only hold when convenient, they aren't values, they're hobbies. The Stoic path is lonelier than most. You will outgrow conversations, decline shortcuts, and walk away from noise that others call opportunity. But solitude is not punishment, it's purification. It's the silence where you hear your principles clearly again. And in that silence, courage begins to feel less like fire and more like gravity, something that holds you steady when the world tilts. You realize you don't need to shout your convictions. You just live them and let time make them undeniable. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, and dissent, yet remained kind and firm. He didn't command virtue with volume. He embodied it with presence. That's what it means to act alone, to hold the line, even when no one's watching, even when the crowd moves the other way. So if you ever find yourself standing alone in what you believe, don't rush to fill the silence. Breathe. That silence is not emptiness. It's proof that you've stopped following echoes and started following truth. And that's how courage sounds when it stops needing noise. True virtue doesn't need an audience. It breathes in quiet rooms, in unrecorded moments, in the choices you make when no one is watching, when there's no applause waiting at the end. The modern world confuses visibility with value. We live in a culture where every act of goodness must be shared, every achievement displayed, every opinion broadcast. But the Stoics lived differently. They believed that integrity is strongest when it's unseen, because when you remove witnesses, all that remains is truth. Seneca wrote, "What you do in secret is who you are." That sentence still echoes across centuries. It's easy to be kind when people are watching. It's easy to be disciplined when being seen for it. But when it's just you, the real you, and no spotlight to prove it, that's where virtue either lives or dies. Imagine this. You're alone at work and notice an error no one would catch if you ignored it. Or you find a small advantage you could take and no one would know. No punishment, no witnesses, just the quiet tug of conscience. That's the moment Stoicism comes alive, not in grand philosophy, but in the microsecond between impulse and choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself, "Don't act as if you will live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you while you live, while you can. Be good." He wasn't performing morality for an audience. He was reminding himself that every moment is a moral opportunity, one he might not get again. Doing the right thing when no one sees is freedom, because when you live that way, you no longer fear exposure. You don't worry about reputation. Your life is its own defense. No secret shadows chase you at night. No double life to maintain. You move lighter, cleaner, clearer. Virtue gives you that weightless strength, the kind that can't be faked, bought, or broadcast. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that, even in solitude, you remain aligned. We often think morality is about being good for others, but the Stoics understood. Morality is first about being whole within yourself. It's not about how you appear, but about who you become in your private moments. Try this small practice at the end of the day. Ask yourself, if someone had seen every moment of my day today, would I be proud? Not perfect, but honest. That question isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to strengthen you. It keeps the mirror of conscience clear, so you can trust what you see. The paradox is this. When you stop trying to appear virtuous, you actually become virtuous. Because real virtue isn't decoration, it's direction. It tells you where to go when no map exists, when rules fall silent, when reputation isn't enough. So, do the right thing when no one sees. Do it because it keeps your soul in order. Do it because peace of mind is a luxury built only through consistency. And do it because someday, when life strips everything else away, titles, applause, possessions, integrity will be the only thing you can still call your own. Real virtue isn't hard or soft. It's balanced. Strength without compassion becomes tyranny. Compassion without strength becomes surrender. The Stoic path walks between those two extremes, firm in principle, gentle in presence. Many people misunderstand Stoicism as coldness, as the art of not caring. But the truth is the opposite. The Stoics care deeply about justice, wisdom, friendship, and service. They simply refused to let emotion drown judgment. They practiced measured warmth, the kind that sees clearly while still choosing kindness. Marcus Aurelius, who commanded armies and carried the burdens of an empire, wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He could have met cruelty with cruelty, but he didn't. He knew that retaliation corrupts the soul faster than injury. His compassion was not weakness. It was discipline in disguise. That's what makes Stoic virtue so powerful. It doesn't depend on mood. You help not because you feel like it, but because it's who you've chosen to be. You forgive not because the other deserves it, but because resentment poisons the vessel that holds it. The balance between strength and compassion lives in every decision you make. When to speak and when to stay silent. When to correct and when to let go. When to protect and when to surrender. Every moment asks, can you stay kind without becoming naive? Can you stay firm without becoming cruel? Seneca said, wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness. But kindness, for the Stoic, was not indulgence, it was clarity. It came from understanding that people act from ignorance, pain, or fear. So when someone lashes out, the Stoic sees a symptom, not a threat. And from that understanding, gentleness emerges. This doesn't mean you let the world walk over you. It means you set boundaries without hatred. You say no without venom. You protect peace without becoming the chaos you're avoiding. Try this reflection. When you are tempted to react harshly, ask, will this response add dignity to the situation or just noise? Dignity is the Stoic compass. It always points toward grace. Even in conflict, strength gives your actions structure. Compassion gives them humanity. Together, they create balance, the kind that radiates quiet authority. People can feel it when you carry both. They trust you more. They calm round you. You become a living example of what harmony looks like in motion. And here's the deeper secret. Compassion doesn't make you vulnerable. It makes you invincible. Because once you learn to see the pain behind people's behavior, you stop taking their chaos personally. Their words lose the power to wound you. You respond with clarity, not revenge. That's virtue in its highest form. Not moral superiority, but emotional maturity. To meet anger with understanding, cruelty with steadiness, and ignorance with patience. That's not softness, that's mastery. So remember, being Stoic doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening it wider, but protecting what enters. It's the balance of an open hand and a strong spine. Grace and grit walking side by side. That's the strength that moves the world quietly, without needing to shout. There is a kind of strength that doesn't need to be announced. You can feel it in the presence of someone whose words match their actions, whose promises align with their behavior. They don't preach values, they embody them. That is the Stoic ideal, to live in such a way that your life itself becomes the lesson. Marcus Aurelius never set out to become a philosopher king. He simply tried, each day, to act according to reason and virtue, to rule himself before ruling anyone else. He wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Those words are not lofty philosophy. They're a call to embodiment, to stop debating goodness and start demonstrating it. The modern world is full of advice. Everyone tells you how to live, but the Stoic doesn't tell. He shows, not through perfection, but through presence. When others gossip, he listens. When others panic, he steadies. When others curse the dark, he lights a candle. That's what it means to live by example, to let your behavior speak for you long after your words fade. The Stoic doesn't seek followers. He becomes reference. People remember how you made them feel. Calm, safe, respected, more than anything you said. That's leadership in its purest form, influence through integrity. Seneca wrote, "Long is the robe through precepts, but short and effective through examples." He understood that moral instruction means little if the instructor doesn't embody it. And the same applies to us. Philosophy is easy to quote, difficult to live. Yet every small act of consistency, returning kindness for hostility, maintaining honesty when pressured, working diligently when unseen, is another quiet proof of principle. Living by example doesn't mean perfection. It means persistence. It means showing up aligned more often than not, and correcting yourself humbly when you fall. The Stoic never claims moral superiority. He practices moral sincerity. He learns, adjusts, forgives, and moves forward. The power of example is that it spreads silently. You never know who's watching. A colleague, a child, a stranger in passing. Learning from how you carry yourself through adversity. Your calm becomes contagious. Your restraint teaches without lecture. Your kindness reshapes the temperature of a room. And maybe, one day, someone will face their own chaos and remember not your words, but your composure. That's how legacy works in Stoicism. Not in fame, but in quiet transmission of strength. To live by example is to become a mirror of your principles. You stop seeking external validation because your alignment becomes its own reward. Your peace deepens, not because life got easier, but because you stopped dividing who you are from what you do. When your thoughts, words, and actions move in one direction, you become whole. And wholeness, that rare, steady harmony, is the highest form of strength. So walk as you speak, and speak only what you live. Let others find their reflection in your steadiness. And when they ask what guides you, you won't need a speech. You can simply say, "I practice what I believe." That is virtuous action. That is strength in motion. And that, more than any philosophy ever written, is the Stoic legacy worth leaving behind. After all the striving, the fighting, the lessons and losses, you arrive at something simpler. A kind of peace that doesn't shout. It doesn't announce itself with victory or applause. It just waits quietly, right where you are, presence. That's what all the pillars have been leading toward. The ability to live here, now, without demanding that the moment be anything other than what it is. You see, most people live in fragments. Half of them in yesterday, replaying what can't be changed. Half in tomorrow, worrying about what hasn't arrived. And between those halves, the present starves. It's there, but barely noticed, like background music in a crowded room. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself, "You will never live this day again. Why then waste it?" He wasn't being dramatic. He was being precise. He knew how easily the mind trades the irreplaceable for the imaginary. Presence is not about slowing time. It's about reclaiming it. Every breath is a place, an entire life unfolding in miniature. And yet we rush through it, chasing something just beyond reach. The Stoics saw gratitude as the medicine for that blindness. Gratitude is presence practiced. It's the act of noticing what already is, without needing it to be more. It's the quiet recognition that this morning, this cup of coffee, this breath, are not guarantees, but gifts. Seneca wrote, "We should enjoy present pleasures in such a way as not to harm future ones." To him, gratitude wasn't just appreciation. It was responsibility, to be fully alive without consuming life itself through greed, comparison, or haste. So pause for a moment. Look round, not with your eyes, but with your awareness. Everything you need to begin again already exists within reach. The warmth in your hands, the steady rhythm of breath, the stillness between sounds. Presence is gratitude in motion, and gratitude is presence understood. When you merge the two, you no longer chase peace. you inhabit it. This is the quiet gift of being here. Nothing to prove, nothing to earn. Just this moment, enough, and entirely yours, modern life is. Built on a quiet lie, that happiness lives just one achievement away. One more promotion, one more purchase, one more sign of approval, and then, finally, peace. But when you reach that one more, the finish line moves, the mind whispers again. Not yet, not quite. Not enough. We spend our days chasing a horizon that keeps retreating. And in that pursuit, we forget the ground beneath our feet. Gratitude is what brings you back, not as sentiment, but as practice. It's the discipline of enough. The Stoics warned against endless craving. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That wasn't an argument for poverty. It was a reminder that contentment is measured in perception, not accumulation. If the mind never says, "This is sufficient," it will never rest. No matter how much you add, try this small exercise. At the end of the day, list 3 things you already have that would devastate you to lose. Health, friendship, a roof, the ability to breathe without pain. Look at that list and realize you are already living someone else's prayer. Gratitude doesn't mean settling for mediocrity. It means refusing to let longing steal the joy of what's already yours. It means learning to enjoy success without turning it into a new form of slavery. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Each craving you release returns a piece of freedom. Each time you whisper, "This is enough," the noise of comparison fades a little more. But practicing enough doesn't happen once. It's a rhythm. You reset it daily. Like breathing. Wake up. Notice abundance. Work. But without panic. Rest. Without guilt. It's a balance, not a rule. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the universe owes him nothing, that every sunrise is borrowed time. He didn't write that from despair, but from deep appreciation. He understood that expecting more blinds you to the miracle of what already is. Gratitude is not a reaction to perfection. It's a rebellion against dissatisfaction. It's saying, even in imperfection, I can still find beauty. Even in delay, I can still find meaning. So today, practice enough, not as a limit, but as liberation, not as resignation, but as recognition. Look at your life and whisper, I already have everything required to live wisely, love deeply, and rest peacefully. When you realize that, the endless chase quiets, desire becomes lighter, and for the first time, you stop running toward happiness and start walking with it. Gratitude is not an emotion you wait to feel. It's a lens you learn to see through. And, like any lens, it changes the way the world appears. Nothing outside you shifts, but the colors soften, the edges blur, and what once looked ordinary begins to glow with quiet significance. Think of it this way. Gratitude doesn't add anything new to your life. It reveals what was already there. It's not a matter of acquiring, but of awakening. The Stoics call this the view from above. Marcus Aurelius would practice imagining himself lifted high above the earth, seeing cities, oceans, people, all moving within the same brief flicker of time. From that height, envy dissolves, petty annoyances lose importance. What felt like a tragedy shrinks to its true scale. Temporary, survivable, even instructive. Gratitude expands your sight in the same way. It reminds you that behind every frustration hides a privilege. The stress of work means you're trusted with responsibility. The noise of family means you're not alone. The ache of effort means you still have strength. You begin to see that every burden, properly reframed, carries a blessing inside it. Seneca urged his students to Count your blessings rather than your years. He wanted them to measure life not by its length, but by its awareness, by how often they paused long enough to notice. Try this the next time you're annoyed. Pause and ask, what would this moment look like to someone who has lost what I still have? Perspective doesn't erase hardship, but it puts it in proportion. It keeps small troubles from consuming large parts of your soul. Gratitude is the art of returning scale to life. It rescues you from tunnel vision, the kind that sees only what's missing and opens your eyes to what's intact. And the more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. Your first thought in the morning is no longer, what do I need to do? But I get to do this. That single shift from duty to privilege transforms the texture of living. Epictetus, born into slavery, found freedom in that realization. He said, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." To him, gratitude was not decoration. It was defiance, a refusal to let circumstance dictate contentment. Because gratitude, when practiced daily, becomes resistance against despair. It keeps the mind from shrinking into complaint and the heart from hardening into entitlement. It keeps you curious, humble, alive. And one day, without effort, you'll notice that you no longer have to remind yourself to be grateful. You'll simply be awake to the beauty that never stopped surrounding you. The sunlight on your skin, the laughter in another room, the quiet hum of life continuing. That's not positivity. That's presence perfected. We spend much of our lives waiting for big moments, the milestones, the breakthroughs, the visible signs that something has changed. But life, if you really pay attention, is made almost entirely of small things. The sound of rain on the window, the taste of coffee before dawn, a conversation that doesn't need fixing, the feeling of being quietly understood. The Stoics never promised ecstasy. They promised clarity, and from clarity grows a gentler kind of joy, the peace of noticing. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present, without anxious dependence on the future." That's not an invitation to laziness. It's a reminder to inhabit reality fully, before it becomes memory. Because one day, you'll look back and realize that the moments you call ordinary were the very ones that built your life. Gratitude anchors you in those details. It teaches you to look again at what you overlook. How water feels on your hands, how the air smells after rain, how much silence hides in even the busiest day. When you start paying attention, you realize that life was never withholding beauty. You were simply too hurried to notice it. Presence isn't about doing less. It's about being more inside what you're already doing. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Walking to work becomes communion with the world. Even waiting in line becomes a practice in patience and perspective. The Stoic doesn't escape the ordinary. He inhabits it so deeply that it becomes extraordinary. Marcus Aurelius found peace not in palaces, but in repetition, writing the same reminders to himself each night. Focus on what's in front of you. He knew that meaning isn't hidden in grand events. It hides in the way you treat each passing moment. A kind word, a held tongue, a breath taken instead of a complaint. These are the unseen stitches that hold a steady life together. Try this today. Don't seek novelty. Seek depth. Find one ordinary moment and experience it completely. No phone, no distraction, no hurry. Taste it. Hear it, feel it. You'll notice something strange. The ordinary, when given full attention, becomes sacred. The Stoics believed that peace wasn't a destination, but a discipline. You cultivate it through small acts of noticing until it becomes second nature. And when you can find peace in the simplest things, the complex ones lose their power to disturb you. Gratitude doesn't remove hardship. It balances it. It reminds you that alongside every difficulty, There's still air to breathe, light to see, people to love, and lessons to learn. Even pain, viewed closely enough, contains fragments of grace, empathy, patience, understanding. The ordinary is not the absence of meaning. It's the home of it. And once you see that, you'll realize the miracle was never waiting somewhere else. It was always hiding here, in the rhythm of your breathing, in the softness of a quiet day, in the simple fact that you are still alive to notice everything you love is temporary. That's not tragedy, that's truth. And if you can face the truth without flinching, you unlock a deeper kind of gratitude, one that isn't built on possession, but on awareness. The Stoics contemplated impermanence every day. They called it memento mori. Remember that you will die, not as morbidity, but as medicine for forgetfulness. Because when you remember that life ends, you stop wasting it. You stop arguing over small things. You stop postponing joy. And you start realizing that every encounter, every sunrise, every heartbeat is on loan from time itself. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He wasn't condemning people. He was pleading with them to wake up, to stop living as if tomorrow is guaranteed, and to start living as if this breath matters. Impermanence is what gives everything its value. Imagine holding a flower that never fades, a sky that never changes, a song that never ends. Eventually, you'd stop seeing them. It's the fleetingness that makes them beautiful. We love because we lose. We notice because we know the noticing won't last. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He would remind himself, "Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everyone will have forgotten you." It wasn't despair. It was freedom. Freedom from needing to leave monuments behind, from needing to control legacy. He knew the goal was not to live forever, but to live fully now. When you accept impermanence, gratitude stops being a reaction and becomes a way of seeing. You no longer need life to promise permanence before you love it. You love it precisely because it doesn't. You stop clinging and start cherishing. Try this reflection. Look around you, the people you care about, the small details of your space. Now imagine, just for a breath, that this is the last time you'll experience this exact arrangement of life. Not to invite sadness, but to sharpen vision. Notice how suddenly everything becomes vivid. Colors deepen, time slows, attention returns. That's gratitude through impermanence, seeing things clearly before they vanish. The Stoics didn't worship death. They used it as perspective. They believed that awareness of endings brings you closer to beginnings. That in remembering mortality, you discover intensity, the ability to live without delay. And so, when something changes, when someone leaves, when life moves on, don't harden. Let that awareness soften you instead. Every ending is proof that you were given something real enough to lose. And if you can thank life for that, even through tears, you've reached the heart of Stoic peace. Gratitude through impermanence is not about pretending you're unhurt. It's about realizing that even loss carries meaning. That everything you've loved, every person who's shaped you, every joy that's passed, has left fingerprints on your soul that time cannot erase. The Stoic doesn't cling. He remembers. He doesn't demand forever. He honors the fleeting. He knows that nothing lasts. And that's precisely why everything matters. Eventually, gratitude becomes quiet. It stops being a list of things you count and turns into a rhythm, a way of moving through the world. You no longer have to remind yourself to be thankful. You simply are. Gratitude becomes the air you breathe, not the words you speak. At this point, peace no longer depends on what happens. It grows from the way you meet what happens. Calm, accepting, awake. You've stopped chasing moments of happiness and started noticing the happiness that lives inside the moments themselves. That's what the Stoics meant by tranquility. Not a life without noise, but a mind that no longer echoes it. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He didn't escape into that soul. He returned to it, because when gratitude becomes your default, your mind turns from battlefield to sanctuary. The world doesn't get easier, but you stop adding friction. You meet life as it is, not as you demand it to be. This stillness isn't apathy. It's aliveness without tension. It's the ability to stand in the middle of change, aware of everything yet clinging to nothing. It's the understanding that every breath is borrowed, every relationship temporary, every sunrise a final one for someone, somewhere, and yet life goes on. And in that fragile continuity, you find reverence. The Stoics saw gratitude and virtue as siblings. One inspires the other. Gratitude reminds you how much you've been given. Virtue guides you to give something back. That reciprocity turns existence into service, and service into meaning. When you live that way, you become a quiet source of steadiness in a restless world. Try this tomorrow morning. Before the day begins, place your hand over your heart. Feel it beating, and asked, unearned, constant. You did nothing to deserve it, yet it's there, faithfully working to keep you alive. That's life's first gift, and perhaps the only one you ever needed to remember. Gratitude in stillness doesn't require grand gestures. It lives in simple habits, patience in a line, forgiveness after anger, appreciation in conversation, presence in a goodbye. Each act, small and fleeting, says, "I understand what this means," Seneca wrote. He is most powerful who has himself in his own power, and gratitude, when mastered, gives you exactly that, sovereignty over your inner world. It's the moment you realize that external chaos can't reach you without your consent. The storms can howl, but the flame within remains. Eventually, you stop seeking peace because you realize you are peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on silence, but the kind that sings quietly under the noise. You carry it in how you walk, how you listen, how you forgive, how you stay. And that stillness spreads, invisibly, wherever you go. So when life rushes by, as it always will, pause for a heartbeat and whisper to yourself, "I am here. I am breathing. I am grateful," because in that whisper, you'll hear the truest sound of wisdom. Not victory, not achievement, not control, but peace that no one can take from you, because you finally learned to live in it. You've walked a long path, from the first moment of awareness to the final breath of gratitude. Each pillar was not a lesson to be memorized, but a way of returning to yourself. The Stoics never asked you to become someone else. They asked you to remember who you already are beneath noise, fear, and illusion. Let's take a breath and look back. You began with perception, learning to see clearly, to separate what happens from what it means, and to stop letting untested thoughts decide the temperature of your day. You discovered that your peace begins not in control, but in clarity. Then came adversity, life's inevitable pushback. You learned to reframe pain as raw material, not punishment. To say, even this, when life turned cruel. To treat hardship as practice, not proof that something is wrong. Amma 40, love of fate, became your quiet anthem. Next was emotional discipline, the art of calm in the chaos. You learned that emotion is a signal, not a sentence. That anger, fear, and sadness are not enemies. They are messengers asking to be heard, then guided. You practiced the pause, the restraint, the stillness that turns reaction into response. And from that stillness, you found freedom. From there, you stepped into virtuous action, the bridge between inner strength and outer integrity. You realized that wisdom means nothing without motion. That courage often means standing alone. That doing the right thing when no one is watching is the quietest and most powerful form of leadership. Virtue became your compass, not for perfection, but for alignment. And finally, you arrive at grateful presence, peace in every moment. You learn to stop chasing and start noticing, to see beauty in the ordinary, strength in impermanence, and stillness in gratitude. To realize that peace was never waiting somewhere else. It was built, breath by breath, inside you. 5 pillars, 5 disciplines, 1 transformation. You no longer need to ask, how do I control my life? The better question is, how do I master myself within it? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That is the Stoic promise. Is strength so steady it doesn't need to be loud. A calm so deep it doesn't depend on silence. A peace that cannot be taken, because it no longer comes from things that can be lost. So when the world feels heavy again, and it will, return to what you've built here. See clearly, accept fully, feel deeply, act rightly, and live gratefully. These are not steps you graduate from. They are circles you walk for a lifetime. You will falter, and that's part of it. The Stoic doesn't aim for perfection. He aims for presence. Each time you catch yourself, you return to practice, and every return makes you stronger. Take this philosophy off the page and into your hands. Bring it into your work, your relationships, your quiet moments. Be the calm in the room that others can anchor to. Be the voice that chooses reason over noise, kindness over ego, purpose over comfort. Because the world doesn't change through arguments. It changes through examples. That's the invitation of Stoicism. To stop talking about peace and start being it. To live so steadily that your mere presence reminds others what balance feels like. If this message resonated with you, if it reminded you of something you've always known but forgotten in the rush, stay on this path with me. Here, we explore not how to escape life, but how to stand unshaken within it. Because philosophy is only alive when it's lived. So take a moment, breathe, reflect, and ask yourself, what will I practice today? Will it be calm? Will it be courage? Will it be gratitude? Whichever it is, begin now. And if you want more conversations like this, subscribe, stay connected, and keep walking with us. Every week, we dive deeper into the Stoic way of living. Practical, grounded, honest. No empty motivation, no noise. Just the timeless strength that helps you live better, not just feel better. Because peace isn't a secret. It's a practice, and you already have everything you need to begin.